It was an ordinary Tuesday night when everything changed for Sarah. She had just gotten into bed after finishing up some work, when suddenly, a bright light shone through her bedroom window. She tried to get up but found herself paralyzed, unable to move. The next thing she knew, Sarah was being levitated out of her bed and pulled feet first through the window by an unseen force. Looking up, she saw a glowing disc-shaped craft hovering above her house. She was brought inside the strange ship and placed on a cold metal table in a room with blinding lights. Shadowy humanoid figures with large oval eyes were surrounding her. One of the creatures approached and, without warning, inserted a long needle into Sarah's arm, which caused her to slip out of consciousness. When she awoke, Sarah was lying in the field behind her house. She was confused, disoriented, and there were strange markings on her skin.
Wait a minute here. Are these aliens or demons? Because they sound awfully familiar. Find out today. You're having coffee with Conrad on
Conrad Rocks!
Welcome to yet another edition of Coffee with Conrad. This is Conrad from ConradRocks.net. That's my blog. Rocks of Revelation being poured out to you. Now, you know my passion is for you. Yes, you, the listener to the Coffee with Conrad podcast, to have a spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus. Now, one of the aspects of having a spiritual relationship with the biblical Jesus is the discernment of spirits. And with that discernment, we should be able to tell the difference between extraterrestrial aliens and demonic entities. Today, we're going to be discussing the possibility that aliens could actually be demons from another realm or dimension. We will explore both sides of the debate by exploring my personal experiences, the stuff that I've read, and discussing theories that have been proposed throughout history. By the end of this podcast, you will have a better understanding of how these two entities may or may not be related. Are aliens actually demons? Let's hop to it.
We are having coffee with Conrad at ConradRocks.net.
You know, I'm going to say here, if you're a New Ager and you're starting to read the Bible, it may look like the Bible contains references to what could be alien races, you know, especially if you're reading the Bible from, you know, a perspective of Eric von Däniken or Graham Hancock, for example. Looks like UFOs might be interacting with humanity. However, I believe upon closer examination, that we can see the Bible reveals that these entities may in fact be demons in disguise, and we're going to address that today. For example, Ephesians 6:12 speaks of spiritual rulers of darkness in heavenly places, which could imply demonic forces operating in the cosmos masquerading as aliens. Now, when Jesus describes witnessing Satan fall from heaven in Luke 10:18, was this a cryptic account of banishing an extraterrestrial threat? And could Jesus casting out of demons in Matthew 8 be an instance of dispelling alien oppressors? Though initially seeming to describe, it depends on which lens you're wearing when you read the Bible, but when initially seeming to describe extraterrestrial encounters, these biblical passages do not definitively confirm intelligent alien life, but rather spiritual warfare with demonic beings. Is it possible that by presenting themselves as technologically superior aliens from other planets, that these forces of darkness are deceiving humanity? Now, as we explore accounts of alien contact, we must question whether they are truly extraterrestrial or if an even more sinister demonic intelligence is at play. This podcast will examine the evidence that aliens could be the latest manifestation of ancient demonic entities seeking to keep humanity in bondage and rebellion against God. So I'm going to tell you, I've been fascinated with UFOs and aliens since I was a kid. I mean, I remember going to Roswell, New Mexico, and I was all all on up into that crash in Roswell. And I also read von Daniken's books, Chariots of the Gods, which, by the way, I'm going to include a way for the listeners of this podcast to get it for free on Audible, for trying Audible. Just listen to the end. But anyway, there are some compelling historical examples. I mean, they even have Ancient Aliens on the History Channel. I mean, there's some compelling evidence that could support the idea of ancient alien encounters. Let's talk about a few of them right now. Eric von Daniken wrote about the Nazca lines in Peru, and these are massive geoglyphs that depict animals, plants in geometric shapes up to 1,000 feet long. And von Daniken claimed that they were built by extraterrestrial people, so that they could see from a long distance the stamp on the earth, and they could recognize the earth. If my memory serves correct, I think he said something like that. While these are impressive, these large geoglyphs can be explained through basic tools and techniques available to ancient peoples. There's really no need to invoke aliens to account for them. Another historical encounter, and this is pretty amazing because people get all caught up in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1. He gets right in to the wheels within wheels. He's describing a vision with beings arriving in a flying vessel accompanied by wheels. You remember it? And as well, there's a humanoid figure gleaming in bronze and fire. So some interpret this, as a depiction of a spaceship and an alien pilot. However, this vivid imagery is apocalyptic symbolism common to prophets at the time. And also think of like the prophetic symbolism in the book of Revelation. So these fantastic beings and objects represent theological concepts or angels, and I don't believe they're aliens. The Dropa stones. These circular stones with tiny hieroglyphs were allegedly found in Chinese caves. Some claim that they tell the story of an alien spacecraft crash landing 12,000 years ago. So if authentic, they could suggest ancient alien contact. Dropa stones are a set of small circular stones with hieroglyphic-like markings on them that some people believe were made by an ancient alien civilization called the Dropa. There is not a lot of evidence to support the claims, so many experts believe that this is a hoax or could be the result of a natural geological process. Now, another really interesting one is the sarcophagus lid of King Pakal at Palenque. This famous Mayan funerary stone appears to depict King Pakal operating some kind of spacecraft. He looks like he's looking through a telescope or something, and von Daniken claimed it represented an astronaut. So if so, it implies Mayans witnessed space travel. This theory has been disputed by historians and archaeologists who point to the evidence that it's a representation of the Mayan god of death who is showing or guiding Pakal to the underworld in a canoe-like craft rather than a spacecraft. While this is visually striking if you've seen it, the scene can be interpreted as depicting Pakal's journey to the underworld according to a Mayan myth. It's not operating as a spacecraft. The spacecraft-type components match Mayan cosmological symbols. The Ramayana, this ancient Hindu epic, it describes flying machines called Vimanas, if I'm pronouncing that right, and it's used by the gods. Similar machines are mentioned across other Sanskrit texts. The detailed descriptions suggest potential real-world inspiration. The epic tale of Ramayana also features a variety of supernatural beings, such as demons and other entities with extraordinary powers. These creatures are said to have used an advanced technology to fly and travel throughout the universe. In addition, it's believed that some of these entities possess magical abilities, such as shape-shifting and teleportation. Does that sound familiar? So when I think of Vimanas in the Ramayana, I think of the chariots of fire that you see throughout Scripture. Elijah was on one, remember? But they're flying chariots or an aircraft, but they're definitely not aliens. In fact, most scholars interpret the Vimanas as mythological vehicles that actually represent the spiritual journeys of the characters in the epic, rather than actual flying machines. So they're often associated with the gods and celestial beings and are often depicted as having supernatural powers. The idea that they represent aliens is more of a modern reinterpretation of the epic, but it's not commonly accepted in Hindu scholarship. Now let's talk about the stone discs of Bhayankara Ula. These stone discs, discovered in China in 1938, supposedly contain etched hieroglyphics telling the story of an extraterrestrial spacecraft crash. They're said to be over 10,000 years old. These discs are said to contain images of aliens and their flying machines. They're believed to be evidence of an ancient alien visitation to Earth. Some believe that these hieroglyphics tell the story of a battle between the aliens and a race of demons. How interesting is that? Now, these discs are said to contain instructions on how to build a device that could be used to contact other worlds. These discs have been studied by various scientists, but the exact meaning of the hieroglyphics remains unsolved. It's a mystery. Sometimes scientists believe that the symbols represent an alien language, while others suggest that they may represent an ancient form of Chinese writing. So whatever their origin, these mysterious artifacts continue to fascinate researchers, and they spark debate over what they may indicate about our past and our future. So just so you know, most experts believe these discs are actually a hoax. They're actually a hoax. The hieroglyphs do not match any known ancient writing, and the discs were likely manufactured in the 30s. Oh well. So now there's the temple sites in Malta and their controversial carvings. These historic temple sites in Malta contain mysterious carvings that date back to, it's actually disputed, but probably between 3600 and 2500 BC. That's disputed, of course. And some theorists believe that the carvings depict alien spacecraft and technology. It's interesting how this is all over the planet, so this is purported evidence of ancient extraterrestrial contact. Now, others argue that the carvings are simply religious symbols or representations of demons from folklore traditions. So the carvings they're visually striking, but they're highly disputed. Most archaeologists do not believe that they represent alien spacecraft. So while the sites themselves are accepted to be very old generally, the exact age of the carvings is debated. The carvings provide, fodder for those that believe in ancient aliens. Like if you're going to go if you already believe in ancient aliens and you're looking at them, you're going to go, yeah, I hit the jackpot. But there's no scholarly consensus that they represent extraterrestrial contact. So the mainstream view is that the carvings hold cultural and religious meaning to the ancient peoples in Malta and not alien spacecraft. So their interpretation remains open. It is fascinating that there's similar type drawings all over the world. All over the place. So no wonder you can believe in it, but that they're aliens, but also there's demons all over the world, right? So the prehistoric cave paintings found in Val Camonica, that's in Italy, date back to a long time ago. Whenever they mention dates, I'm like, but they're saying 10,000 BC. So some people believe the paintings contain images of figures in spacesuits and helmets that resemble modern-day astronauts, which is amazing. But the more likely interpretation is that these are depictions of ceremonial costumes and masks used in ancient cultural rituals. Any resemblance to modern spacesuits is just a coincidence. So the Val Camonica cave paintings also contain numerous images of animals and other natural figures. So this suggests that the paintings had religious, ritualistic, or spiritual significance for the prehistoric peoples who created them. So the strange humanoid figures are likely representations of gods, demons, or spirits, or mythological beings that existed in the ancestral folklore of these ancient cultures. So while the exact meaning of the cave paintings is still debated, most archaeologists and scholars agree that they do not represent evidence of ancient aliens or space travel. The consensus is that the paintings represent the spiritual and religious beliefs of prehistoric peoples in the region. The alien images are better understood as ritualistic costumes.
Digging deeper, going higher at conradrocks.net.
So to me, it seems like if you're going in with the mindset that, hey, there's possibly aliens, how could you explain all this? Even lost people can read the Bible, and they do for historical purposes. I mean, scientists read the Bible to figure out stuff. There's biblical archaeology. How did these walls fall in Jericho? And also von Däniken, when he was writing about the Nazca lines in Peru, that's a very strong argument. If you're lost and you want there to be aliens, I think the argument was he's like they would stamp planets all throughout the universe. So aliens from, many light years away can go, okay, that's our mark on Earth. I mean, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. But I believe that people that say that these are aliens, they're lacking scientific rigor. I believe extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And while they are remarkable, it's like there's a commonality. There's these hieroglyphs all over the world, and they're ancient, and they look like ancient aliens or space travel. But guess what? Demons are all over the world too, right? So I just, the jury is out on this. I'm still leaning to that these aliens are spiritual warfare. They're actually demonic. And let's talk about the biblical support that aliens are actually demons. So Revelation 12:7-9, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So this passage here in Revelation, it refers to Satan being cast out of heaven. And I believe that this is a dimensional argument. And I've talked about that more in other podcasts. But he's also cast out with his angels, or, some people believe that these angels are demons. There's a debate on that, whether those are disembodied spirits from the Nephilim that we find in Genesis chapter 6. So it could imply fallen angels and demonic entities are no longer constrained to the heavenly realm, but they can interact with the earth. So this provides a pathway for them to manifest as aliens. So while this passage, it gives insight to the reality of demonic entities that have been cast out of heaven, it implies that these entities have the power to deceive. The whole world is deceived. Can you imagine the magic act that's going to happen because of this? The whole world believes it's aliens and not demons. Now, how would that thwart the gospel of Christ, right? So then it's possible here that when people are actually encountering demons, they're going to call it aliens. And here's another really good argument in 2 Corinthians 11:14. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. I was in the New Age for a long time before I got saved. They would talk about beings of light, light beings. And the Bible refers to it too. New Agers read the Bible. I think they steal a lot of their stuff from the Bible, actually. But notice here that he's able to transform. And if you read some interesting stuff in the Talmud about how angels, when, in Genesis chapter 6, when they're talking about that, they're talking about how these angels can come from the heavenly realm, manifest in the physical, and then they're subject to like passions like you and I here on earth. But keep in mind, they can also transform. If Satan can transform into an angel of light, well, why can't he transform into a little green man with black eyes? So demons, I've seen demons quite a bit, and they come in all shapes and sizes. They might be able to shapeshift. I don't know. But yeah, they can transform. Let's just leave it at that. All right, so now here's another compelling one, 2 Thessalonians 2:9-10. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. So in this passage, it mentions that Satan is displaying signs and wonders to deceive. I want you to think about the Egyptian magicians. They could do a lot of that stuff that God was doing through Moses. They couldn't do all of it, but they could do some amazing things. And that is designed to deceive people. And what better hoax would there be than deceiving people that they're aliens when they're actually demons? I mean, that would cause people to probably just reject the gospel. I mean, that's probably the goal of Satan, wouldn't you think? So, I'm pondering this passage a little bit more here, because look at who it's designed to deceive, okay? And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth. So think about it. These lying wonders and signs are designed to get people that are not saved deceived. Because, what if the truth came out that there are actually demons that exist? Then the people that are lost would have to confront the fact that God is real. This here, the way they're pulling it off, is they're disguising themselves as aliens, so the people that are unsaved don't have to deal with the gospel. I mean, that might be a stretch, but it's pretty good, don't you think? Now, here's another compelling text in the Bible, Ephesians 2:2, where in times past you walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. When the Bible is referring to Satan as the prince of the power of the air, this implies that his domain extends to the skies and beyond earth. And when I ponder this, I also think about airwaves. Look at the information that's coming through the airwaves. That might be a rabbit trail, but it's definitely interesting. So this passage here, it grants the means for demons to operate in space and appear as aliens. I mean, where do you see the UFOs? They're in the air. Is it any wonder that we see these spacecraft in the air and that Satan is the prince of the power of the air? Something to think about. Now, of course, you can't get around this whole subject without talking about Nephilim, which is extremely interesting, but please don't dedicate your whole life going down that rabbit trail. You've got a mission for God, but this is definitely something to talk about from time to time around the kitchen table. Genesis 6:1-2, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all which they chose. So the sons of God, a lot of people interpret them as angels or fallen angels. And depending on who you are, you could say, it's an extraterrestrial being, and they're interbreeding with humanity. Now, if you read up, I casually studied UFOs and aliens. It's just something I'm not too preoccupied with it. It's just interesting. But if you read up on alien encounters, you're going to see that they're preoccupied with sex and reproduction. You're going to run across fetal harvesting in a short while in the UFO circles. And the Bible even talks about how the demons or the angels mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they do not cleave one to another as a man cleaves unto a woman. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but this is going to lead me here to the next segment about the overlap, the common denominators between aliens and demons. A lot of their stories overlap, and I've experienced a lot of this personally. So many of you that follow my podcast know that I suffered terribly from demonic night terror, and one of my missions is to help people out of that with the tools that I learned. And one of the interesting things, though, about this is that I could tell that demonic night terrors that I experienced in the alien abduction stories were very remarkably similar. So there are definitely some notable overlaps between modern alien abduction accounts and reports of demonic oppression or possession, whatever. And I've experienced a few of these. So the first one is paralysis and immobilization of victims. It's common to both. People that claim to have been abducted by aliens, they are unable to move or speak during these experiences. It's as if they're held down by an external force. And that has happened to me on multiple occasions. It's like something sitting on your chest. In the book that I wrote, Overcoming Night Terror, Making the Demons Leave, you can find that on Kindle. On the cover, it came from a painting from a man a few centuries ago that was experiencing demonic night terror. And there's this little demon sitting on this lady's chest. And it's like they're holding you down while you're paralyzed. This is a definite similarity between alien abductions and demonic encounters. Now, another thing that happened is both alien abductions and demonic attacks tend to happen at night. Okay, that's when the victims are asleep. They happen at night when the victims are asleep. Both of them. So that's definitely significant. Another one is levitation. You know, we see that many people who claim to have been abducted, they have what appears to be out-of-body experiences or levitation. And I've experienced tons of out-of-body experiences when I was demonically attacked as a child. In my book, Open Your Eyes, My Supernatural Journey, which you can get on Kindle, I talk about how I woke up on the ceiling in one of my demonic attacks and then fell onto the bed and the bed shook. So you might think, oh, that's strange, but keep in mind, there's a scripture where Satan takes Jesus up to a high place, in Luke 4:5, and the devil taking him up into a high mountain. That's Jesus. The devil could take Jesus up to a high mountain. Isn't that crazy? And then he showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. So clearly, demons can levitate people. It's in the power of Satan to do so if God so allows it. But notice that both demonic encounters and supposed aliens, they both can do levitation and have something to do with out-of-body experiences. Too similar to dismiss, right? Now, I mentioned fetal harvesting. You're going to run into that eventually, but this is another common denominator here. Sexual molestation or reproductive experimentation is present in many abduction and demonic encounter stories. These entities, for some reason, they seem to be obsessed with human sexuality and reproduction. And this, of course, echoes what we talked about in the Nephilim a little bit earlier in Genesis chapter 6. Now, this idea of fetal harvesting, I know it sounds way out there if you haven't heard this before, but there's actually a verse in the Bible in Daniel 2:43, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So they're doing like genetic experiments. So you may think, oh, these are aliens doing it, but this is talked about in the Bible, right? There's an overlap there. Seriously. Now, here's another, it may seem trivial to you, but it's in both. The entities causing the experiences are often described as menacing or terrifying or scary, despite what their outward natural appearance is, okay? Their true nature seems to be masked. Demons can masquerade as an angel of light. But notice that the spirit guides in the New Age, once you get suckered into that, they often appear to be friendly in the beginning, but once they got you, then you have the torment and the terrors. Okay, there's disturbing flashbacks and just this residual fear. So you don't want to do it again. I mean, you don't want to go back into your night terrors. You don't want to be abducted again. There's this terrible fear reported by victims of both phenomenon. The experiences seem intentional. It's like man, the Lord hasn't given you a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and a sound mind. Well, these demons, they give you a spirit of fear, man. And so do the aliens. So there's definitely an overlap there. Now, this is not something that I personally experienced or that I remember, but in my studies, I noticed that those who experience apparent alien abductions, they often report a sense of missing time, or there's long periods of time where they were taken and they can't account for it. So they have no memory of the events transpiring, right? And it's kind of like a blackout, I guess. If you've ever been really drunk and you blacked out, you're like, wow, I have no idea what I was doing. So similarly, those tormented by demonic oppression, they frequently describe mental confusion, memory loss, and even disassociation regarding the disturbing phenomenon. So I don't really remember losing track of time in my demonic encounters, but it's possible. I mean, it was a long time ago, but that's something that I've noticed while I was studying for this. Now, here's another interesting fact or common denominator here. In some abduction and demonic encounters, the victims report waking up with unexplained marks, scars, or injuries on their bodies that were not present before, okay, that are unaccounted for. I have seen this, like, for instance, you can read about the account, the possession of Clarita Villanueva. I think I've done a podcast on it about how Lester Summerall went to the prison in the Philippines and cast the demon out of her. She had like bite marks in her body. They could come, I don't know if they came from the inside or whatever. And there was also hair, like from a demonic entity from the other realm. It's pretty interesting. So, but there are definitely marks from demonic attacks from the movie Entity. And that's based on a true story about a demonic possession in Texas. That person had bruises and bite marks all over their body. These demonic encounters and also alien encounters seem to leave bruise marks, scars, or injuries on their bodies that was not there before. That's definite overlap. So another thing here is aliens and demons both appear interested in controlling human minds. And you're like, well, what about Christians? Well, I'm going to get to that. Okay. They aim to influence thoughts, beliefs, and understanding through these experiences. And if my theory is correct, they're trying to get unsaved people to not accept the gospel. And I got that idea from Chuck Missler's book about alien abductions. It's a great book. He talks about how no Christian has ever claimed to have been abducted by aliens. Now, come on now. No Christian has claimed to have been abducted by aliens. There's something to that. The name of his book is Alien Encounters. I'm going to give you a way you can get that for free for trying Audible. Just listen to the end of the podcast. But Missler makes a claim that there's no documented cases of born-again Christians being abducted by alien beings. He argues that the lack of Christian abductees is telling evidence that supposed aliens are actually deceptive demons. So Missler contends that Christians have divine spiritual protection from these forces through their relationship with Jesus. He points to passages like Ephesians 6:12 that describe spiritual armor guarding believers against powers and principalities. All right, so now I'm going to give you a little insight into my mind. Okay, I've been a Christian since 1995, and I've seen a lot of fake stuff. Even in ministry, it's frustrating. So when I say dig deeper and go higher in every podcast, I do dig deeper. I want to know if that thing is real. And there's so many things that have deceived the whole world. Okay, there's this kid that faked going to heaven. Remember that book? The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven by Kevin and Alex Malarkey. That's her last name, Malarkey. That's exactly what it turned out to be. In 2004, 6-year-old Alex Malarkey was paralyzed and badly injured. And basically, him and his father, they co-wrote a book claiming Alex visited heaven. And in 2015, as a teenager, he revealed the entire story was fabricated. The whole world can be deceived, man. That's one of my points here. And that's why, I want to dig deeper. I want to get to the truth of these things. And I don't want the people that listen to my podcast be deceived. There's another deception called the Piltdown Man hoax. The Piltdown Man hoax, which deceived the whole world, okay, was a hoax in which bone fragments were presented as fossilized remains of a previously unknown early human, trying to fill in the gap for Darwin, the missing link, that type of thing. And this hoax was so convincing that it was accepted by the scientific community for over 40 years. Okay, it began in 1912. Then they busted him later. There's also the Loch Ness Monster hoax. I mean, people still buy the Loch Ness Monster, even though it's been debunked. The guy admitted in 1994, as far back as 1994, but however, this hoax still persists to this day, right? Sperling, this guy named Sperling, he had a little submarine and a model of a monster's head, and that's where he took the photograph. He lied about that. Speaking of aliens, everybody thought the crop circles was legit. However, that has been debunked too. In 1991, two British men, Doug Bauer and Dave Corley, admitted to creating hundreds of crop circles in the 70s and 80s, right? So they're trying to make it look like aliens are doing crop circles. So I'm not really sure if you've heard of SETI. That's the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They have never reported anything from far away galaxies. Notice all the UFOs and stuff, they happen to just manifest here in the earthly realm. They don't come from distant galaxies. We've been looking and listening and have never seen anything from outer space heading to the earth. It always suddenly appears on the earth. This is biblical because it's interdimensional. SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has been actively searching for signals in alien civilizations since the 60s. So far, no conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence has been discovered. Although there's been some interesting anomalies that have raised eyebrows. For example, in 1997, they detected a signal called the WOW signal that appeared to come from the direction of the star system Sagittarius. However, the signal was never repeated, and it's still unclear whether it was actually a signal from an alien civilization or simply a natural phenomenon. So SETI hasn't found anything. So I thought I'd give you a clip from somebody that might be an expert on this subject. Charlie Duke. He's a former NASA astronaut and one of the 12 people who walked on the moon. He was part of the Apollo 16 mission in 1972. On the moon, he was responsible for driving the lunar rover and collecting scientific samples. He's also known for his sense of humor, and he became famous for exclaiming, "This is the greatest thing that's ever been done in the history of mankind." Well, he has a take on whether aliens are demons or not. Listen to this clip with Glenn Beck.
You believe in UFOs, alien life?
No, I don't believe in alien life. I believe that there are. God showed me a specific answer to two prayers, that they're demonic, and that they're demonic beings that make an appearance and appear to be real, and they are real. Satan, Bible says Satan can appear as an angel of light. Mm-hmm. So they can appear, and so nothing human can make a 90-degree turn at 3,000 miles an hour and survive. And so they have these, and I think the purpose is to draw you away from the real God and say, look at us, and this is where you ought to be because we are superhuman and we can do it. So that's my feeling. People laugh at me generally, but I'm not going to be, I don't care. Because,
I love you. I love you.
Yeah, God He's answered prayers, my prayers specifically. And so I said, and I get laughed at when people say, well, that's what God told me, so I'm going to say that they're demonic beings, and there's not any extraterrestrial. I mean, not superhuman, but other civilizations out there that are farther away from us. It's a distraction from God.
Well, I think you're kind of getting my stance on the subject. I've studied it passively, off and on for 20, 30 years. I've always been interested in UFOs and alien abductions and stuff like that. And I was really intrigued about Chuck Missler's book. And von Däniken, took me down that rabbit trail. It's very interesting stuff. Speaking of that, I'm going to give you a way to get both books for free for trying Audible.
Are you fascinated by the idea of ancient aliens and want to explore further? As a loyal listener of Coffee with Conrad, you can now get not one, but 2 free audiobooks by trying Audible for yourself. Audible is letting our listeners experience their service firsthand at no cost by offering 2 free audiobook downloads from their vast library. You can choose 2 books perfect for fans of this podcast: Chuck Missler's Alien Encounters and Erich von Däniken's classic Chariots of the Gods. Both dive deep into theories of alien contact with ancient humans and are packed with historical evidence and testimonies. Get access to these 2 audiobooks and enjoy Audible's catalogue of other great extraterrestrial and unexplained mystery titles. Give your ears a treat without spending a dime by taking advantage of this special offer for Coffee with Conrad listeners. Learn more about aliens, both modern and ancient, through these free Audible books. Experience Audible and expand your knowledge. Click the link in the episode description to claim your 2 free downloads today.
So throughout our exploration today, we have seen compelling overlaps between accounts of aliens or demons, from nighttime encounters, levitation, out of body, missing time, unexplained injuries. While the extraterrestrial theory may seem intriguing, I believe from my Christian perspective that the biblical evidence suggests that these beings are actually deceptive, demonic entities seeking to thwart the gospel, seeking to thwart humanity's relationship with God. So now, as we search for truth in these mysteries, I like to look at all sides, but I like to be grounded in Scripture, the truth of the Word of God. The Bible tells us to test the spirits, and we need to also be cautious of our own preconceived biases, which I believe is highly destructive in this study. Now, if you found this podcast thought-provoking, please take advantage of the offer for the Coffee with Conrad listeners. Get Chuck Missler's Alien Encounters and Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods for free with a trial of Audible. If you haven't tried Audible, you can get it for free. My link will be in the show notes. Also, if this has touched you, please share this episode with your friends and family on social media. God bless you. I want to thank you for being in my life. Until we meet again, dig deeper and go higher.
Dig deeper, go higher at ConradRocks.net.